this to get out of this, or this will happen, it will fail, and then I roll dice, and that decides whether they're going to make it or not.
Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here today with Thomas J. Devens. He's the author of Stone and Shield. It's the first book in the Fall of Emros series. Thomas, how you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. It's fun to read a book, especially a fantasy book like this, and then pick the brain of the author, see what all went into it, because there's a lot that goes into these books. So I guess the first thing is, where did your inspirations come from to write this series?
Really just years of liking fantasy, and both all from books. Like, it's been my favorite genre, so books, what I can find as far as movies and TV goes, video games. So just over the years, a little bit of everything. If I'm a fan of mythology in general too, so that always adds to it a little bit.
Did
And
you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
I was going to say there's a specific mythology that you used for inspiration.
I tried not to draw too much from specific mythology, but the two that I was always kind of been most interested in were like Irish Celtic, Irish and Scottish Celtic mythology, and Norse mythology.
So when did you get to the point where you said, I want to write this book and I want to publish it? When did that kind of light go off in your brain?
That was finally just like 7 years ago. I've been wanting to try to write before. I usually would like write a paragraph and then just be like, oh, no, this shit, and throw it out and not try it again for like a year. And finally, I just decided that I've been wanting to do it for so long. I'm just gonna sit down and start. And I started being happy with some of what I wrote, so I stuck with it.
Did you start and then go back and stop and start over, or did you go back and change things, or how many times did you kind of start and then say, no, I don't like this, or did you just kind of change things as you went?
Everything I wrote before I decided I was actually gonna follow through with it, I just got rid of. We'll never see that again. And then, yeah, once I actually decided I was gonna, no matter what, finish at least one novel and see how it went. That from there on, I just like kept at it, saved everything I worked on.
And the Fall of Emros is it a trilogy, or how long do you plan to stretch it out?
Right now, it's kind of depending a little bit on how the third book ends up, which I'm in the middle of writing right now. My plan right now is to have it be a 5 book series,
Hmm.
and but the third book, it's kind of following two distinct storylines that are happening at the same time. So I may split that into 2 books instead, which would make it a 6 book series. But my only reason for doing that is because it may end up being like a 200,000 word novel if I leave it all together. But I'm gonna write the whole thing, have it ready to go, and then decide whether it works better as 2 books or one.
Oh wow, that sounds like a lot of work. Is that a lot of work to break it down and to decide that, or does it just kind of you roll with whatever happens?
I'm probably gonna just roll with whatever happens because basically it's the two main like the two storylines are fairly distinct. I could easily just take those chapters, set them aside, and not combine them, and then have the 2 books separated. I don't think it'll really make a difference whether they're all together or not. So like there'll be like a group of point of views that are one main part of the story, and then another group of point of views are the other part. So I can easily just separate them if I need to.
So I wanted to ask you because there's some character deaths, and we'll keep it non-spoiler until we get to that portion. But there's some character deaths that I did not expect in Stone and Shield. How do you do anything specific to set those up to be surprising for the reader?
Some of them, honestly, there were a few like if there was like a big battle going on and a character's in a situation where they may come out of it, they may not. I don't want to give anyone like plot armor. I don't want to play favorites and be like, oh well, this character's going to survive just because I want them to. So there's actually quite a few of those that I was like, okay, they can do this to get out of this, or this will happen, it will fail, and then I rolled dice, and that decides whether they're going to make it or not. So that way, I'm not playing favorites. Like I have the two possibilities of what could happen, and then it's basically just a coin flip. Did they make it?
Do you ever get attached to them, and does it ever like pain you to kill some characters
Uh,
off that you get attached to?
there were a few in there. There were a few in there that I actually had plans for like later books, and I was like, but one of them wasn't a coin flip. I just felt like it was the way it was supposed to go. So that one, but I was still upset about it.
That was and we'll get into the spoiler chat here in a few minutes. But man, there was a couple that were. I thought this guy's gonna be around to the very end, and they were dead. That was fast. I did not see that coming. That was good though. Were there certain themes that you wanted to touch on throughout the series? Was there like an overlapping theme that you were kind of exploring?
The main thing that I want to stick with throughout those books, especially with following the mercenaries of the Stone and Shield, is like the idea of found family and the importance of like the bonds that you make for yourself with the people you meet.
Hmm. But I think the banter back and forth was some of my favorite portions of the book because it can be really serious, but then you get to that back and forth that they have, and because of all the things they've been through, it makes sense that they
Mm.
have that kind of back and forth. So I think it's always good to insert that into books like this to kind of break up the it and Sword and Shield isn't too grim, but there is some violence and some
Mm.
battles and stuff, so it's good to kind of break it up a little bit, have some humor in there.
Yeah.
And when you started writing it, do you and some authors tell me, well, the characters tell me where the story goes, so I just go along for the ride. And some authors say, well, I have everything decided. Where are you in that?
The characters definitely tell me where to go.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like I know where certain things in the story are going to end up, like certain things that are going to happen in the world, but a lot of it is when the character gets to a certain situation, it's not really up to me to decide what they would do, like their personality decides what they would do. There was a few of those deaths that were caused by that, which kind of foils my plans once in a while, and then you find a way to work around it and come up with something different.
Do you ever do characters, if you want to add a character, does it just kind of do they pop in on you, or do you plan to add characters later in the series that you plan to use for other storylines?
Yeah, there's a handful of new characters that pop up in the other books coming up, and I kind of treat it like I throw a lot of names in there, so like some people don't really like that, but I kind of like the idea that like everyone that is in there in the book for even like a couple seconds is just as significant or insignificant as everyone else. Like they're all just people. So I end up giving names to people that might only pop up for a couple paragraphs,
Hmm.
but then that also leaves the potential for them to be more significant later on. And so yeah, just like as people are in different towns, there might be someone that plays some sort of an important role and ends up becoming a character that you follow around.
And speaking of character names, how do you choose a character name? How do you get these names? Do they kind of you throw in a name generator, or how do you get them the names? Do you have a certain set of letters or certain types of names that you try and use?
There's certain things. Sometimes I just use a name generator. There's definitely quite a few that were from that. Sometimes they'll just pop in my head. Based on sometimes I try to think about like the character's background, like where they're from, like what, and like try to keep certain sounds similar amongst different cultures.
Hmm.
So there's all the like there's a bunch of names that are similar, like with double eyes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. They're all kind of a similar background.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And because I always wonder in fantasy with these crazy, there's some crazy names that are hard to pronounce. So I wondered where these all come from and kind of where the inspirations are for it.
I tried not to have a dozen syllables with
Yeah,
apostrophes.
yeah, yeah. There's some fantasy names that are like 15 letters long, and it's like I don't even know how to spell that. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I don't know who this person is. And uh, so when you started writing it and you knew it was gonna, and I think you talked last time about possibly a prequel. Is that still in the cards?
Um, so there's a few like there is actually part of the second book is kind of a prequel,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But I am gonna be working on. So I'm working on one novel that takes place like a few thousand years in the past, but that's gonna be. I'm working on that slowly. Like I'm gonna take my time with putting that out, and it takes place in the past, but it doesn't really have much to do with the events of this series. So it's
Oh, okay.
basically just set in the same world. And then I also had the idea of I started a story that probably going to be a short story or something, maybe a novella that is focuses on the Stone and Shield right before the first book when they're in doing the job in the desert, stomping down that rebellion.
Yeah. So for someone who hasn't read the book, how would you pitch it to them? What would you describe it as? What kind of experience would they be in for before they read the book? What would you say to someone who's like, tell me about the book. What is it about?
I usually go with gritty fantasy. I stray away from like all, or maybe grimdark adjacent. I know it's not
Hmm.
straight grimdark, but so I go with gritty fantasy, following a group of mercenaries as they just try to survive, as everything is changing in the world. Lots of disgruntled old working veterans and stuff like that.
So let's go ahead and get into some spoilers because I have some thoughts on the Stone and Shield. So I wrote down as I was reading, I wrote some notes down. But so what kind of the first thing that struck me was, Calto was the peaceful emperor who held peace, and of course, he dies towards the beginning of the book, and Raz, his son, takes over. And I thought it makes sense for someone so young with so much power all of a sudden to be irrational and to not make the best decisions. Is that kind of something you were thinking of as you wrote that character?
Yeah, like I don't really picture him so much as like like I never thought of him as like the evil sort of emperor. You know, he's just a kid that doesn't know what he's doing. He has all this power thrown in his lap, and he
Hmm.
just wants to spend it on himself. Like, yeah, he's just kind of a spoiled kid that was just handed too much and doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, and with him, I think he's a really interesting character because I wonder too, with Calto, him spending all the time being the emperor, if he neglected his duties as a parent, as he was spending so much time as the emperor. So Raz not getting that attention or maybe bonding like that, he didn't learn how to be an emperor either during that
Mm.
time.
And I haven't decided in the future books how closely we're going to be in his point of view. So you'll definitely learn a little bit more about like his thoughts on his upbringing and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like there was like the throwaway line in that book about just at the very beginning when he has to like serve his own wine or serve the counselors the wine and everything. Like he feeling like he's not treated like royalty and stuff. So there are a few things that come up, and then like there's the part with the one advisor kind of contemplating how he's going to end up in the future. So yeah, in the third book, I've been doing a few chapters with his point of view, where you'll kind of get a little bit more of his inner thoughts. But I'm
Hmm.
also thinking about kind of distancing the reader from him at a certain point, so that
Hmm.
you kind of see what's going on in the empire, but like from a few steps away too.
And another thing I thought, another thing I thought of that him being this teenager who's irrational and who, like you said, has all this power thrown in his lap. It's also makes him vulnerable because you throw a beautiful woman at him, and he's I don't know, he's gonna resist. So I wonder what the motives are too there. With that was pretty sudden that they came with a partner for him that quickly. So you wonder what's the motivation there.
And so that was you'll learn a lot more about that in the second book. But
Mm.
also that was the his betrothed was also the the very first paragraph, the of chapter one, the servant, the tea girl
Oh, I must have missed that.
with the yellow eyes.
Oh yeah. Oh, I didn't make
So
that connection.
so that the marriage was basically already arranged before that meeting,
Yeah.
and then going any more into the probably spoilers for
Okay.
the rest of the series.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely don't want to be spoiled on the rest. So yeah, I just thought he makes the whole empire really vulnerable with being so young and not really equipped to handle all of it, and he acted like the way you'd expect a teenager to act in this situation, I think. So the first death that I have have written down is Cal, because I didn't expect him to die like he did and that quickly. They caught me by surprise quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of that is just influences from other like some of my bigger influences is definitely like Joe Abercrombie and Steve Larson. So I kind of part of that is just kind of liking the idea of just like, oh, here's a character, oh, they're
Yeah,
dead. Just like throw a bunch of backstory at you. Okay, they're dead.
yeah. Because I thought for sure he was going to play a part in the whole story. He's gonna join up, or he's gonna do something. Something's gonna happen. He's gonna be a character we follow at least throughout the book. And I was like, and then he's gone. It's like, okay, that was really good. I like that. I mean, I don't like that. It always pains as a reader. It always pains us to see a character that we start to get attached to die, but it's cool too at the same time.
Mm.
So I noticed that the first about 200 pages or so was lots of kind of setting the stage. Is that was that intentional to kind of give the reader an idea of where we are?
Yeah, and to with since I like doing so many point of views, to be able to have the chance to get to know the characters and care about some of them too,
Mhm.
rather than just throwing all this stuff when I'm like introducing like 50 people to you.
Yeah, I did like that we start to kind of get settled in, and then we kind of jump around a little bit more. But we I didn't feel like it was sudden or it was we had enough time with each group that we could establish who they are and what they were what they were doing and what was happening to them. So that's it. I would imagine that'd be kind of tough to do those to know when to switch over to the next point of view.
Yeah, I had some in the beginning. I definitely had a lot of trouble with that, and I think I've got a decent handle on it. And sometimes it's honestly, I might be writing a scene and be like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing with this next. You know what? Let's go visit these people. Sometimes it's just that simple. Other times,
Yeah,
I think I'm kind of getting I got my stride with it. Just figured out the best times to kind of cut it off and move on to the next one.
yeah, good. And even if you know where you're going with the characters, I wonder how to know when to stop and continue again later. That must be kind of tough to do when you kind of get on a roll. You kind of feel it.
Yeah, yeah, like deciding like, have I been spending too long in this scene? Is it going to get boring if I stay here too much longer? Should I move on, or have I given enough information about what's happening?
Yeah,
There might be stuff happening later on that same night. Should that be included or just talked about later?
yeah. Was there anything that you go back now and read Stone and Shield and you think I should have changed this or I should have little things that you noticed that you've evolved on in your writing or your storytelling?
There's there's a lot. Um, Not so much with like the story itself. I just think my writing in general has gotten better. Just like kind of the way I've worded certain things, and that I kind of wish I could go back and tweak. But as far as like the actual events that are happening, I think I'm mostly happy with it.
Hmm. Yeah, I always wonder that is because you look back at anything that you do and you look back on when you finish it and you have a chance to reflect and then you think I should have tweaked this or I should have tweaked that. I wonder, it must be, yeah, especially with a series that's going on for a while. It must be tough to kind of keep track of all the different threads that you set up in the different books.
Yeah, I'll have. I'll be. I was rereading a little bit and listening to the audiobook because I had taken a break from writing a third book for a little while to kind of like get me back into the flow of things. And I was listening to some of the audiobook at work and just like go through like hear a certain section. That sentence is awful. Like I could have definitely worded that differently. Did I just repeat that word that many times in one paragraph? And
Yeah,
stuff like that. So
yeah,
most of my things I would go back and change and stuff like that.
yeah. I would imagine that'd be simple things that you don't catch. Even
Yeah.
experienced writers, I think, even like long term, right? People who have been writing for 20 years, they still do that kind of thing. I would imagine.
Mm.
So it sounds like a common problem. And with character deaths, one of the things in it, I'm not sure if this is a thing to really enjoy or not, but one of the things I really enjoyed was the last second before a character dies. There are some of them that have this last moment before the world goes away, and some of those
Mm.
came sudden, but it was like impactful to see the character die. Not only see them die, but to experience their last like 2 seconds of their life.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of those, especially with Yamu, when he got killed in the first like main battle, he
Hmm.
was one of the ones that I had plans for. Was going to be like a bigger character that I guess, but like figured out he was like had a past as a was he had the knife up to his throat, and headbutts the guy. Like, does that hand go back and catch him, or does it fall away? Yeah, I was like, so I was like, all right, well, he's dead. I gotta at least like kind of give a nice bit of his inner thoughts and kind of like have him go in some peace at least.
Oh wow! So is that something that you try and do for most of your characters? Is to give them that last moment?
It depends. You kind of just feel it out from the scene because sometimes it doesn't. I like the idea of doing it, but sometimes it might not fit too well. And then sometimes it may be more impactful to just like have it be another character seeing them fall, so you don't get to be in the character's head as they die. And so it just depends on everything else that's going on at the same time.
And speaking of the different perspectives and seeing other characters, I like that you saw the different perspectives of different characters through the eyes of different, the different characters seeing the other characters through the. So you would see one scene through one point of view, and then see the same event or the same thing in another point of view. And I liked that interpretation of the different characters, how they saw each other.
Mm. Yeah, that's something I really had fun doing. I try like just with certain scenes where when you get to see like everything leading up to an event, but then everything after is in someone else's perspective, but you still have that one anchoring point. And then I've seen that in a few other books I've read in the past, and it's something that's always stuck with me.
Yeah. And one of my favorite characters, I think you probably hear this a lot, but Furla, is that how you pronounce her name?
Fearless.
Furla.
So the
She's
double
a
I
great
is
character.
usually like an E sound. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay, gotcha.
she's awesome.
Yeah. So
But
I hope you don't
also,
kill her. Yeah.
I'm
What were you going to
not
say?
going
I'm
to
sorry.
say anything.
Yeah. Oh no.
Um, and also pronunciations, even if I say this or that, they're not a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was a fun character, and you'll see a lot of her in the second book. But what I did with the second book is it's kind of six short stories
Hmm.
rather than one full novel because there were a few storylines that just kind of dropped off in Stone and Shield, and I wanted to kind of like catch the reader up on what's going on with those. So I ended up doing six short stories that are about like 10,000 words or so each. It's like an 80,000 word book, and there's six of them in it. And yeah, one of those is following Firla after she gets on the boat and goes back to Phobos.
Because her killing, I'm going to probably mispronounce his name. Nooser?
Nicer.
Nicer. I can't read my own writing. Sorry. um, when she kills him with her helmet, that was one of the best moments of the book in my mind.
Yeah, I there was a part of me that was wondering if I should let him last a little bit longer and continue to be like this kind of villain on the side and it's like no. Once she was on the boat, I was like, no, this is just gonna end abruptly.
Yeah, I was thinking he was going to survive and be a villain, but part of me wanted him to survive, but mostly I wanted him to die horribly. But yeah, that's good stuff. And the smuggling God's Leaf, I always enjoy when fantasy kind of ties in this like a crime, you know, it wasn't tobacco. And then they make a distinction between no, it's not God's Leaf, it's tobacco that
Mm.
someone else is smoking. But I always like that they were like smuggling, and it's like a criminal enterprise kind of thing in fantasy. I think it adds another layer to the world when you have that kind of thing in it.
Mm. Yeah, and that's that'll be coming up a lot. That's going to be a predominant fixture of the world, sort of. You'll learn a lot more about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I really like that. The smuggling. I think especially in fantasy, it's good to have those different, different little subplots in there.
Hmm.
And I did like that there was these moments when, they discuss this cycle that happens when instead of picking up, um, instead of farming or instead of doing something else, they're mercenaries or they pick up a sword instead of a shovel or whatever it may be, and this cycle that keeps continuing, but yet they don't stop what they're doing. They just keep. It's like this never-ending cycle. I thought that was really great for them to have those kind of discussions in here. Is that something you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of like a worker's mentality. I feel like I've definitely been at plenty of jobs where I didn't want to be there, but it's just easier to keep doing what you're doing. Like this complacency of just kind of just shutting your mouth and getting your job done. You know. So yeah, a lot of it's that. A lot of it's kind of like just like yeah, working folks sort of thinking.
Yeah, another thing I think that I kind of took away from that is that they have this bond together, and they kind of like soldiers. They get attached to each other, and they want to throw themselves back in danger to help their, whoever they're with, to help protect
Yeah.
them and to help keep them safe. I think that was part of it. I thought was pretty well done with those moments between, the banter and the found family kind of thing with them. All what they've been through. It makes sense that they have that kind of connection.
Mm. Yeah, like you get they're in this life where they're just like with the people that they care about. They don't really have anywhere else to go. So why go try to settle down somewhere when everyone you care about is doing this thing? And yeah, travel, see the world, and a lot of people can get stagnant if they just sit in one place. And so there's all sorts of reasons that keep them from being able to just have a quiet life.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of that reflection. I think adds to the characters and their motivations and that kind of uh, reflection. And one of the lines that got to me was towards the end of the book that they had after the battles and they had the blood of their friends and enemies on them days later, but yet they're still working. They're still doing their duty. I thought that was because I never thought of it that way. That you'd have blood on you days later, not only of your enemies but of your friends, maybe even yourself. But that was a really effective line in there.
Yeah, like just having to move and not having the chance to stop to do something to take care of the basics, and at the same time, just all these memories that you won't be able to get away from for even a minute, just as you're just trying to force yourself along.
Yeah, and to push on, knowing that the people that you've come to be attached to, that their blood is all over you, and you still have to carry on.
Mm.
So I never really thought of it that way until that line. Another thing that was a good moment too was when they went back to bury Tan, and it wasn't a big, it wasn't really drawn out, but it was enough that it was one of those touching moments.
Mm. Yeah, and so I like that because it had a chance to give a little bit of peace and closure to some of the characters, the ones that fell, and then Baron, who was the one there to do it. But also, it kind of like connects him to the new group of people that he found, and gave a chance for them to to show them taking him in and being and supporting him and everything.
Yeah, it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like a really drawn out. storyline, but it makes sense for them to go back and to do that kind of thing and put themselves potentially back in danger to do it, to lay them to rest. And another thing, and you talked about plot armor and keeping characters alive just to keep them alive. Droll, after his injuries, he suffers for a long time, and but it would make sense that in a battle like that, you're going to be injured and you're not going to survive those long-term injuries. And so I thought that was, it seemed, I don't want to say realistic because it's fantasy, but it seemed like that was something that would happen.
And yeah, I wasn't good to him. But yeah, I feel like, especially with that stubbornness to refuse to or like the constantly shrugging it off, like it's fine, it's fine. Yeah, I don't think people are often too happy when someone just kind of dies from an infection in a book.
Yeah.
But I
That
felt
was
it was where, yeah, it was. That's where it was headed, and
yeah.
I kind of like having those. Like there's all these epic battles, but then people still die from just common things that you don't take care of something.
Yeah. But it was one of those things that and it would suck to die like that, but those things I'm guessing would happen in situations like this. But that was, yeah, he did not have a good time the last half of that arc. So what's in store for us in book 2?
So book 2, like I said, is it's 6 short stories. So what you have is 3 of them take place after the first book, or like at the end of the first book and going on. So you had, at the end of the first book, you had Firla go off on the boat's furthest with Yofin. So we pick up on that and we follow her briefly and see what's going on in the Western continent and kind of set up for, kind of show you those lands that will become important later on in the series. And then about 3/4 of the way through the first book, after the battle at the harbor, you had both jump off the boat.
Yeah.
And then didn't really go back to that. So you find out what happens to him.
Oh, okay.
So it basically picks up when he got off of the boat, when he jumped into the ocean, and then catches you up on that storyline to a little bit after the end of the first book. And then the third story that's after is just kind of shows you when the Stone and Shield get back home to Frostmourne, and they're kind of training and going through the winter, trying to have a quiet winter without taking on too many jobs. So those are 3 of the short stories. And then the other 3, one of them is when Draw first joined the Stone and Shield. I killed him with an infection, so I figured he deserved a little bit better, so you can see how he joined. And then one of them is there was the one guy, Terrell Yadani, who was one of the hostages of the Honor Blades. And you just see him very briefly. He helps out a little bit at the Battle of Saul Harbor. And this is the events that led up to him being a prisoner in that wagon. Because he's going to play a big role in book 3. So this is just kind of going to establish him a little bit more, let you know who he is. And then the last one is longsword, God's Leaf addict, all around shitty person, and I'll leave it
Sounds like my kind of character.
at that.
And the whole time when we're following Stone and Shield back, they're trying to get back to Emros for their payment, and you know it's not going to end well for them. And they're going through all this stuff. They're trying to get back and get their payment and just move on with their lives. And so there's always that kind of lingering in the background, the whole book. So you know it's not going to end well for them. So it's a bummer, but it was a fun book. I enjoyed it. So I'm looking
Awesome.
forward to
Glad you
book
did.
2. Yeah. Looking
So
forward to
yeah,
reading
with
book 2.
the second book, I definitely I feel like I took a risk on it by making it those short stories, because it's not necessary, because those 6 stories themselves don't tie together in the one book, so that could leave people disappointed. But I felt that it was important to get those stories across before really going on with the rest of the main narrative. And I think it's also it could be an easy read, because, like, if you're reading something else, you could read a novel and then just, like, read one of the short stories in that, and then go on and read something else and come back and read the second. So it's kind of broken up in a way where it could be a nice casual read. But yeah, the one thing is that those 6 stories don't come together just yet. The third book is where everything in that will kind of fall into place.
I think it's a really cool idea to have like 6 short stories in book 2, just to kind of have them in bite-sized stories to tie everything together. I think that's really a good idea. I think that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually something I wanted in the beginning. That was my original plan. Was I was doing the world building, and before I started Stone and Shield and found the story I wanted to work on, my original plan was to have all the events going on in the world, but just to write a bunch of short stories and have each book just be like an anthology of short stories that all kind of link together, but only kind of. They were all stories that were going on in the same world and at the same time, that would have characters cross back and forth, but weren't 100% to link together. But then I ended up coming along the Stone and Shield story that I want to stick with. So the second book was kind of my chance to still go back to my original idea a little bit.
Oh, cool. I'm looking forward to it. So now we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but if you'd be up for it, we'd like to talk about book 2 with you when we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. Just
Cool.
whenever you want to figure out the scheduling, and I'm down for it.
Right on. Yeah, it's fun to, especially these fantasy books. It's fun to kind of pick the creator's brain, see what went into it. So I appreciate you making the time.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Well, where can people connect with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Twitter. I always forget these things. I'm at Stone and Shield. I have an author page on Facebook, which I think is facebook.com / Fall of Emros, and it's as Thomas J. Devens, but I think like the link that what you would type in would be Fall of Emros, all one word. And I have anyone can always reach out to me on email, which is fallofemros, all one word, at gmail.com.
Cool. And I'll put all those down in the description for everyone to get in touch with you and find the book. Cool. Yeah. So thanks again for taking the time and coming to talk about Stone and Shield, and we'll talk about the next book in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me. Always look forward to it.
Yeah, right on. Appreciate it.